It's the best metal of 2021, part 2, baby. Number 25 through 21 out of my top 50 metal albums of the year. If you missed it, I, Emma, the heavy metal lawyer, covered albums 50 through 26 in my previous video. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the list, which I'm hoping to completely finish before I leave New York for Christmas. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number 25, Altars of Ignorance by Tortharry. Czechia is a contender for the biggest country for death metal and grindcore, but unfortunately their amazing scene remains somewhat obscure in the US, even among death metal fans. Hopefully Altars of Ignorance can penetrate that, ignorance. Tortharry were one of the founders of the scene, which I talked about in another video, but this album is far beyond their origins as an old-school death metal band. The drumming showcases the strong grindcore influences in Czechian death, and you won't find a note out of place or any unbalance in the mixes on this meticulously crafted album. So, quick overview of the album front to back. The album starts with an intro track, which longtime listeners will know I'm very much against on principle in the digital age, but that's okay. The real opener is the track Reverse Dorians, which is everything you want in a death metal album opener. Explosive energy everywhere, machine gun blast beats, rapidly chugging guitar parts, and monstrous vocals. Corrosive Haven takes things in a decisively more groovy area, and if you couldn't tell from my Napalm Death fangirling, that's something I'm very much into. Groovy death metal for life. The title track, Altars of Ignorance, has an absolutely pummeling opening, and then the guitar lets that note ring and you're like, wait, is it over? But then it all starts to build up again with one guitar, then two guitars, then the drums, then the bass, and finally the vocals. It's great. Carousel of Grief has this great double time change up, and I always appreciate well executed tempo changes. Self-Fettered was made for circle pits with its almost punk rock central rhythm. Silent Psalm is probably my favorite track on the album for being the most punishing on an album where all of the songs are pretty intense. The Heritage is kind of the ballad of the album, sort of. That's probably a reach. And the epic finale is the 10-minute closer, Forget Us Like We Will Do, which just has the most violent chugging guitar parts. It's massacre-making music. Eventually a piano joins these megaton heavy guitars, and I like how the piano part is very, very sparse. Just single notes being played, sitting about midway in the mix, giving the song a definitively closing track feel while not being some kind of corny attempt at being full-on symphonic. That track also gives the drummer plenty of time to show off with all sorts of fun fills, even as the guitars fade away. Eventually, the drum becomes this military snare beat, and then we actually do get some symphonic stuff. It's epic, it's very goth, it's very macabre. Check out that album. Next up at number 24 is 8612 by SlutBomb. Nowadays, when people refer to a band as power violence, it is usually some kind of ultra-technical mathcore or straight-up grindcore. That's why I was pleasantly surprised to hear SlutBomb playing your 90s, early 2000s power violence, or some call it fastcore. If you like Orchid or Violence by Ceremony, you're going to want to check out this ferocious whirlwind of hardcore at its most extreme. So, quick overview of the album front to back. Before the Sun Burns Out is a classic charging opening to a power violence album, and you immediately are treated to some rapid-fire vocal delivery. And who doesn't love a gaudy guitar bend-based riff? Over it is pure chaos, especially at the end. Brandon versus the Church of Scientology has the album's most memorable riff and some absolutely insane guitar work throughout. Just total shredding, which is very nice to hear in a genre not often recognized for shredding. Dumpster Fire slows down things with a moody, clean guitar riff that almost reminds me of those melodramatic passages that Appalachian Terror Unit puts in a lot of their songs. Moody, clean guitars also featured to great effect in the track The Highest Point in Hamilton County. The title track 8612 features a sample in the intro of a corrupt cop talking about the blue wall of silence before unleashing some fiery fuck the police type lyrics. Good time to point out the album cover is a chef waving a butcher knife at a person wearing a big pig mask. Very cute. The track Pregnant Don't Wanna Be is very timely, unfortunately, and also features some more of that amazing guitar shredding. The album closer Selfish is 14 seconds long, about half of which is a sample, and it's just that kind of wonderful hardcore micro song like you'd hear off of Agnostic Front's first album. At number 23, we have Absolvere by Signs of the Swarm. If you aren't a fan of deathcore, especially if the more pop songwriting or generic sound is what turns you off, this might be the album to change your mind. I was pretty impressed with the previous album, Vital Deprivation, especially the monstrous single Malevolent Enslavement. Seriously, if you haven't heard that track, go listen to that first. It's a leviathan of a song. But Absolvere shows the band going beyond the limits of their genre, introducing elements of psychedelia and symphonic metal. Quick overview of the album. Death Whistle sees the band at its most experimental, whereas Totem is the band's reminder that they can still rip your face off. Dreaming Desecration is more classic Signs of the Swarm in terms of just being outrageously heavy, whereas the title track, Absolvere, features this plaintive lead riff, very open and expansive passages in the middle, featuring very little guitar that mostly is consigned to the background. It's an instrumental track with this very cinematic quality. Soon after, you get Hollow Prison, which, well, starts with the gutturally growled Hollow Prison. And yeah, we're back to classic baseball bat to the face Signs of the Swarm, and a great guest verse by Alex Arian of Despised Icon, aka the band that basically started deathcore. Are there still deathcore elements that some metalheads might find cringe? Well, the band spells the word of with a V in the song titles, and there's excessive use of fading in the channels, but hey, I said it was great deathcore. It's still deathcore. But maybe there's enough here to give the haters pause for thought. There's certainly enough for someone like me, who has always been fine with deathcore, to love. At number 22, we have Pestilential Breath by Fedash and God of Gaps. I did an interview with Matt from Fedash about this album and some of his favorite albums of 2021. Make sure to check that out. For the sake of time, I'll forward you to that one and not repeat myself, other than to say if you like sludge metal, you need to listen to this album. If you like noise music, you also need to listen to this album. And if you like any kind of heavy music, you at minimum should listen to Colonizer, because that song blew my fucking mind. And number 21, we have Chronos by Neptune is Dead. This album is the most bluesy side of the stoner metal spectrum, contrasted with the noisy sludge metal depths of Fedash. Neptune is Dead is a Greek stoner metal band that has a clear influence from the country's penchant for epic heavy metal. Neptune is Dead never goes small on this album. While the opener Brimstone is rock and roll enough for roping in the normies who might be turned off by the more grandiose heights of epic doom metal, even this track is full of lush instrumental fills and short solos. Brimstone is followed by the headbanger's delight of The Fortress of Montauk. Handler of the Mob is the first track on the album where the band goes full-on epic doom metal, not afraid to take its time and hold out notes or cut the other instruments for emphasizing a certain passage. But Neptune is Dead has a very good sense of pacing, and accordingly the following track, Narcissus in Vain, is another rock and roller, perfect for taking the motorcycle out for a late night ride. or in my case, taking the bicycle out for a sensible afternoon ride. Epicness returns in full force, though, on Moray, and I assume you're starting to see the well-woven tapestry that Neptune is Dead lays out on this album of going back and forth between the more epic tracks and the more driving tracks. But folks, I need to reserve some serious time here for the closing track, The Sky. First off, vocalist Frank Lampadaropoulos, sorry Frank, I butchered your last name, has some serious chops. Like, for most of the album, he's giving us well-delivered but mostly gruff rock and roll type singing, but in this song he shows that he's a really good singer with some super pretty timbre in his voice, almost operatic type timbre. But yeah, I've been obsessed with this song in particular ever since the first time I heard it. It's 9.5 minutes long, and yet it still leaves you wanting much more. It is essentially a ballad with this more pared down verses that let the vocals, especially the vocal harmonies, stand out more. And then the heavy instrumentation comes back in for the infectious as fuck chorus. Seriously, once you hear those lyrics from the chorus, they'll never get out of your head. It's very poetic in that rock and roll poetry kind of way. The band actually lays out the song as having 3 movements, and the second movement is a driving stoner metal breakdown to re-energize you for the even more epic final third movement. And folks, out of context, if you told me, oh yeah, this album ends with repeating together as one, I'd be like, that sounds corny as fuck. But the hard work the band puts into building up to it makes the sentiment seem totally appropriate. Particularly because this band is just so good as playing as one cohesive unit. And this is their first album. I cannot wait to see what comes next from these guys. So that's 25 through 21. Make sure to check out all these bands and support them. Links in the description. Make sure to like and subscribe to catch the rest of my top 50 metal albums for 2021. Believe it or not, we are going to reach even higher heights of brutality and epicness. So stay tuned.